Hello everyone, and welcome to another Cut Rate Commander Precon Upgrade Guide, the series where we give Precon decks a glow up without breaking the bank. My name's Grazzet, and today we'll be giving the Outlaws of Thunder Junction Quick Draw Precon $35 worth of upgrades to bring it up to Cut Rate standards. As usual though, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content. Consider supporting the channel directly via my Buy Me a Coffee or Game Nerds affiliate links if you really like it, and be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see what Precon upgrade we'll be covering next. So, with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. This deck's face commander is Stella Lee Wildcard, a 2/4 human rogue that costs 1 and Izzet with the following 2 abilities. Firstly, whenever we cast our second spell each turn, we exile the top card of our deck and may play that card until the end of our next turn. And secondly, we can tap Stella to copy target instant or sorcery spell we control, with new targets for the copy if we so choose, but can only activate this ability if we've cast 3 or more spells that turn. Sporting a lower mid-weight CMC and a defensive stat block for her cost, Stella Lee is quite possibly the most powerful of the 4 commanders in this set by a wide margin, even though at first glance it may not appear as such, and it's all thanks to her tap effect. You see, on the surface, this effect appears to be a run-of-the-mill spellslinger payoff, incentivizing us to cast 2 cheap spells first, proccing Stella's passive to generate some card advantage in the form of Impulse Draw in the process, and then ideally doubling up on a powerful 3rd spell to get twice the usage out of it. And while we can certainly play her that way, whether WotC failed to realize it or not, because this effect is tied to a tap effect and is not limited to once per turn, it actually allows Stella to go infinite quite easily with any instant or sorcery that untaps her, as she can tap herself to copy it while it's on the stack, become untapped due to its effect, and then repeat this process over and over again, enabling her to use untapping cantrips to draw through our entire deck all at once, generate infinite Magecraft triggers for more infinite value, and, most infamously, allowing her to use Twisted Fealty to win the game instantly by creating infinite Wicked Roll tokens, with each new one destroying the old one and draining the table each time. That said though, the base build doesn't appear to intentionally play into the whole infinite aspect of her kit, opting to instead give us more traditional spellslinger tools to work with, though, luckily for us, that does include quite a number of cheap cantrips that we'll need to run anyway to get our storm count to 3 to get Stella spell copying online, as well as some solid Magecraft payoffs to generate that aforementioned infinite value, giving us a solid framework we can build upon by adding in a suite of untapping spells that allow us to go infinite, spell tutors to more reliably get us access to those spells, and more cheap and or quote-unquote free spells to get us the 3 spells necessary to activate our commander with the least amount of mana possible, thereby arming Stella Lee with all the tools she'll need to end our showdown before our opponents even know what hit them. So let us make our way back to Thunder Junction, this time into the Slickshot Gang's hideout where we'll find Stella Lee, their resident knife thrower, acrobat, and magic user. And while she may stand about a head shorter than her fellow gang members, it would be unwise to underestimate her, as her skills have been honed through her travels along the Omen paths to the point that no one has been able to best her in a duel. And even on the off chance that she does meet her match, she has an ace in the hole just in case. A magical artifact that she came across on Thunder Junction that grants her unnatural luck, ensuring her that the scales are always tipped in her favor. So, if you fancy yourself a duelist or think yourself lucky, just remember, Stella Lee has got you beat in both of those departments and is more than capable of proving it. So, now that we know a bit more about the commander and playstyle, let's jump straight into the upgrades. Jumping straight into what is quite possibly our most important upgrade to the deck, we'll be trading out the random Pillow Fort piece Propaganda, which is a good reprint but doesn't really fit into this deck's game plan, so we can add in a Twisted Fealty, which functions as this deck's primary win condition, since, if we can copy it with Stella, we can create infinite Wicked Roll tokens by targeting Stella with it each time, instantly draining the life from the entire table if they don't have a response. Then, while not automatically game-winning in their own right, we'll be adding in a small suite of other untapping instants to our build to generate infinite copies of themselves alongside our commander for infinite magecraft triggers alongside their own effects, which will kick off by cutting the draw spells Finale of Revelation, Deep Analysis, and Tezzeret's Gambit, all of which are decent sources of card advantage, but are unneeded here due to the huge amount of cantrips the final build will have that synergize better with our low-to-the-ground Spellslinger game plan to make space for Cerulean Wisps, Refocus, and Twitch, all of which can draw us our entire deck when copied with Stella to help us dig for Twisted Fealty or other means to win the game on the spot, and replacing the again decent but too expensive Big Score with the half-as-expensive Dramatic Reversal, which may not draw us cards, but, thanks to untapping all our non-land permanents every time we copy it, can instead generate us infinite mana alongside our mana rocks to help us unload our hands and drastically increase our storm count for the handful of cards in our build that care about that. Now, with the handful of spells we'll be adding in to go infinite covered, let's switch gears onto ways to help us get those cards into our hands to close out games, such as replacing the soft targeting protection Winged Boots provides with Mystical Tutor, which lets us place any instant or sorcery from our deck on top of it for only a single mana at instant speed, making it a superb spell to open a turn with to set up our top deck, then follow up with any other spell to impulse draw the card it tutored with Stella for the win, trading out the low power spell payoff Terramander in favor of Personal Tutor, which essentially gives us a second sorcery speed copy of Mystical Tutor, which may only be limited to fetching sorceries, but can still grab Twisted Fealty for only a single mana, so we'll run it. Cutting the scalable board wipe Curse of Swine to make space for Merchant Scroll, which allows us to fetch up any of our untapping instants directly to hand to generate infinite drawer mana to win us the game through them, or, alternatively, letting us fetch up Spell Disruption instead to prevent our opponents from interfering with our turn when we do go for the win later. Sidelining the cost-reducing spell payoff Haughty Djinn to bring in Solve the Equation, which can fetch up any of our win conditions directly to hand for even more consistency, and lastly, removing the subpar cantrip Think Twice so we can add in Muddle the Mixture in its place, which lets us tutor up Refocus and Dramatic Reversal directly to hand thanks to Transmute, or, if needed, can instead be used as a piece of spell disruption to help keep our commander alive and our spells uncountered when we go for the win. So, with our wincons and ways to tutor them side of the equation covered, it's time to switch gears into adding more spells to the build that will help us get to Storm Count 3 so we can activate our commander's spell copying effect in the first place, which will see us replace the OK bounce land Is It Boiler Works, the outright bad land Temple of the False God, the bid too slow Cascade granting Smoldering Stagecoach, and one of our spare mountains with Frantic Search, Snap, Gitaxian Probe, and Strike It Rich, all of which are functionally free to cast by either untapping the lands we use to cast them, letting us pay life instead of mana, or generating us a treasure when we cast them to increase our spell count with no real mana cost to ourselves, and that's on top of being decent sources of card selection, removal, information, and ramp as well, and then exchanging out the bad board wipe Volcanic Torrent, the powerful but much too expensive Spellslinger payoffs in this build, Niv Mizzet Perun and Shark Typhoon, the mediocre cantrip Radical Idea, and another spare mountain so we can add in the cantrips Crimson Wisps, Expedite, Consider, Brainstorm, and Born Upon the Wind, which may not be free but are dirt cheap spells to further increase our spell count with that can replace themselves, while also providing us with additional upside by either granting haste to Stella so we can use her on the turn she comes down, giving us additional card selection to let us dig deeper into our deck, or granting us flash speed casting for a turn to enable us to win even before the turn gets back to us. And then, in order to get even more mileage out of all the cheap spells we'll be throwing around, we'll be replacing the powerful but bit too situational Magecraft payoff Octavia Living Thesis, and the two tribal-dependent cost reducer Kaza Royal Chaser, with the second spell per turn sources of card advantage Jorien Ruin Diver and Crom Violent Cacophony, both of which passively help us dig through our deck alongside our commander as we cast our spells in the early and mid-game so we can hit our wincons faster, and the latter even being a decent, evasive, and ever-growing body to help screen attacks for us or get in for extra damage if needed. And finally, to wrap up our upgrades, we'll be padding our core stats by scrapping the self-milling Leyline Dowser and the 2 slow draw source Treasure Cruise in favor of the Mana Rock's Talisman of Creativity and Felwar Stone, both of which help speed up our mana base in the early game, or serve as cheap spells to bring our storm count up in the late game, cutting the other slow draw source Dig Through Time so we can replace it with Quick Study, which may not draw us as many cards but requires much less setup to be effective, especially in the early to mid game, and sidelining the 2 mana intensive Epic Experiment and Baral's Expertise to make way for an Offer You Can't Refuse and Counterspell, both of which provide us with cheap and effective spell disruption to prevent our opponents from interfering with our plays when we're going for the win, as well as smelting down the 2 situational Mana Rock Midnight Clock to add in Lightning Bolt as one last piece of more direct removal we can use to pick off small to mid-sized creatures or just hit face for some extra reach. So, now that we've covered all 27 cards that we've upgraded from the core build, let's take a look at the breakdown for this Precon upgrade. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 5 instants and or sorceries that untap our commander so she can make infinite copies of them to generate us either infinite draw, ramp, or damage to win us the game, 5 spell tutors that can fetch up 1 or more of these spells to drastically improve the build's consistency, 16 cards that care about our instants and sorceries, 3 cards that care about us copying instants and sorceries, and 4 cards that care about us casting our second spell each turn to generate us board presence damage and value as we sling our spells, and finally 10 cheap cantrips and 4 quote-unquote free spells to get our storm count to 3 and get our commander's copying ability online with as little mana as possible. For general deck stats, we have 12 ramp sources, 9 card draw sources, 9 targeted removal sources, and 1 board wipe. Most of our stats outside of our ramp being just slightly below average due to the combo-centric nature of our deck, though not enough to impact performance. Looking at our mana curve, we have an average CMC of 2.48, leaving us with a very low-to-the-ground curve that, despite its blisteringly fast potential, wants us to play rather conservatively until the opportune moment to minimize the window our opponents have to interfere with our plans. That means we'll want to initially build up our board with ramp and spell payoffs to passively generate us value as we cast our tutors and smaller spells, holding our commander back while we dig for our wincons, and then, once we've drawn or tutored up said wincons, deploying Stella to ideally win the game on the spot if we have a haste enabler, or, if not, when we have enough spell disruption in hand to weather the storm of removal that's sure to come her way to win the game on the following turn via her torrent of spells. The final price of this build then comes out to be $73.87 after upgrades. This price does not include tax or shipping and assumes that the price you paid for the Precon was $40. The price of the cards was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. Now, if we want to add even more upgrades by going over budget, we can consider trading out Murmuring Mystic for Spell Seeker, which gives us access to another spell tutor that either fetches up one of our infinite draw and ramp sources, or alternatively another tutor that can fetch up Twisted Fealty to win off of, replace Bloodthirsty Adversary with Jeska's Will, which gives us another quote-unquote free spell so long as one of our opponents have more than 3 cards in hand that impulse draws us as well to let us dig for more resources, and if we want to give our commander the maximum amount of protection money can buy, we can replace Finale of Promise and Pyrrhic Charge with Deflecting Swat and Fierce Guardianship, which let us cast them for free so long as we control our commander to prevent our opponents from disrupting our turns with targeted removal or non-creature spells, though do keep in mind that each of these almost cost as much as the entire base Precon. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. So, with the Quick Draw Precon upgrade complete, the next build we'll be tackling will be the Spell-Stealing Grand Larceny Precon and its face commander, Gonti Canny Acquisitor. So look forward to that build coming soon. In the meantime though, it's time for y'all to vote on which of the 4 alternate commanders from these precons you'd like to see have a build of their own. Those being the plant buffing and recurring Kiri Talented Sprout, the spell-slinging dragon summoner Iris Roar of the Storm, the combat damage effect doubling Felix 5 Boots, and the mass treasure animating Vihan Goldwaker. So be sure to cast your votes, link in the description, before the deadline on April 20th, and let me know in the comments which commander you voted for and which commanders from this set you'd like to see me feature in future polls. And again, before we close out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Consider donating to buy me a coffee or use my Game Nerds affiliate link if you want to support the channel directly. And if you'd like to see more videos like this one, either click on the videos floating around my head for the latest builds, or click on the card above for a playlist of all the deck techs I've made so far. And with that, have a good one folks, and stay safe.